Hey world, what's happening? It's Patrick Lovell riffing, Truth Bomb riffing on Friday, May 5th, Cinco de Mayo 2023 at 3:30 p.m. my time. If you're tossing a few back and checking out your social media feeds, have one on me and cheers, amigos, I should say. I used to love drinking tequila on Cinco de Mayo, but unfortunately, my partying days are way in the rearview mirror until I succeed in purging corruption. After that, I will join everybody in a big celebration, but until then, there's a lot of work to be done. So, in this ongoing effort to try to inspire you, try to crystallize your mind, try to break through the madness of lies and the deception that exists in every single direction, I hope to persuade you to join me because without you and me, there's no we. And together, we all serve a purpose that if we create a tidal wave uh, populist crusade, then we will purge corruption. If you, me, and everybody you see who isn't a Nazi, who believes in dignity and decency and liberty and sustainability, then we can unite and we can purge perjury and tyranny. And that's our destiny to create a clean new deal. And I mean a clean new deal because if you get rid of the pollution of corruption and ignorance and all of those other things, then all this madness of this identity politics war and MAGA and all of the confusion, but most notably the corruption, which is cancer, is what's in our way. And I believe that the truth is the chemo of corruption. Sorry, chemo's on my mind. I just did a biopsy on my face yesterday. I've got a basal cell, and it's one of many that unfortunately I'm involved with. So, yeah, you can understand that I'm thinking that we should always be keen to think about time and what's at stake and everything else. So, look, just really briefly, in the last 24 hours, I have just seen so much revelation of corruption, particularly at the Supreme Court level. But it brings me to this one question: legitimate as it is, as it relates to Clarence Thomas, and if you think Clarence Thomas is the only guy, especially considering what I would imagine Kavanaugh is capable of, among others. But the question for me is, okay, now we're starting to discover this corruption, and interestingly enough, we're not hearing a lot about the Koch brothers, right? I mean, what? The Kochs were actually what created this whole thing to begin with, and they're not even a part of this conversation because of the billionaire out of Dallas. Okay, whatever, right? But the big question is, okay, so if we can talk in mainstream about Clarence Thomas, why aren't we seeing anything about these massive revelations of Epstein and the scientists at MIT and everything that is involved with Jamie Dimon and Chase? I mean, that's just something that doesn't penetrate mainstream, and it's ridiculous, all things considered. Particularly because it's interesting. It's really interesting in so much that, I mean, come on. First of all, if you don't know this, sexual blackmail has been a thing for a very long time. And it only gets, more intrinsic or dynamic or, what's the word I'm looking for? Almost bulletproof in a way. Technology can create a lot of havoc for a lot of people. Okay. I mean, it's just gotten better, right? Leverage. It's really incredible. And, the idea that you see this intersection, right, of intelligence, which is obviously this is an intelligence situation, whether it's Mossad or whether it's the CIA or both, or something even more peculiar. But when you've got literally some of the titans of technology and finance and politics, and they're involved with the scenario, and then you add on top of it, you've got like literally some of the most well-known thought leaders and scientists in the United States that are involved with this whole thing, right? And you can see a clear pattern. Why would you want to leverage all of those types of people? Why would you want to blackmail anyone who has credibility, who had a lot to lose? Well, because you control them. And obviously that's part of whatever this is. And to see this whole intersection with Chase, the nation's largest bank, who, I mean, the insanity of Jamie Dimon over the course of the last, we'll call it 30 years, but just the last 7 years reveals, I think, 5 convictions, one of which was a RICO for metals insider trading at JP Morgan Chase. And of course, we've learned that, Chase was involved with running all of the Bernie Madoff deals, as well as now Epstein. I mean, come on. And if you didn't know it, about 2 years ago, the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists did the most blockbuster piece I think I've ever seen, called the FinCEN Files, that revealed that there was 2 million suspicious activity reports involving international drug launderers, which could be attached to sex trafficking and that sort of thing, whatever manner of dark, let's say the underworld, right? The dark economy, are involved with oligarchs and countries that are autocrats, like Saudi Arabia, or it'd be probably more accurate to call them some sort of religious fundamentalism, and of course a monarchy at the same time, whatever, undergirded by the world's largest oil reserves, and that role within what we require as the United States, particularly as the dollar is the world's reserve currency, and tied to oil and all of those complications going back decades. So there's this convergence, this intersection of big money, of control, of these sorts of things, and it's like, okay, yeah, we're seeing kind of some revelations of the Supreme Court corruption, but then again, there was calls last night for Congress to do investigation and to be able to snuff out, whatever the ethics demands for the Supreme Court. And it's like, okay, have you seen how corrupt Congress is and how buffoonish Congress is? We can't even deal with this debt ceiling lingering over our heads, let alone, complications and all of the hysteria of what happens in the social media and identity politics wars and all of the rest of it. And on top of this, you've got these revelations ongoing of the Proud Boys that got arrested for seditious conspiracy. And of course, the kingpin, blowhard, pig boy himself, Donald Trump, is still walking on air, breathing free air, playing golf in Scotland, I think, this last weekend. The only thing that Donald Trump ever said that had any truth to it was last year, I think it was August, when he was getting pressed by the media because the protests by the 9/11 families, because Saudi Arabia was, basically they are the money behind the Live Golf Tour, which was at the the Bedminster Golf Course. And Trump says, what are you going to do? Well, he said, nobody got to the bottom of 9/11. What are you going to do? That's the only true statement that Donald Trump has ever offered or uttered in his entire life. Donald Trump is the ultimate reflection. He's this villain from Gotham who's just this player playing the system. And I don't even think he's a good one. It's just how stupid our systems become that we can't take this guy down. Now, meanwhile, I happen to watch one of my favorite economists today that I don't align with, completely ideologically, but I think he's the most important economist that exists, that, basically said so many important things in this interview that he had, that I posted on Twitter if you happen to come across it. But one of the most beguiling things he said, which is why I'm doing everything I'm doing. He said, look, for this system to exist the way it exists, you've got to have a financially illiterate public. They have to be stupid to what's going on for everything to function the way it does. And that's the job of the mainstream media to make it so, aka the New York Times and the Washington Post and really everybody else. That's what I've been battling for the last 13 years, even though, through it. That's why I had to make the con in the first place, because nothing made sense. And I'm not a rocket scientist, and I can guarantee you it's not rocket science, it's racketeering. I understand enough, okay, about the law, about media, and about finance, the way it's supposed to work, to understand when it's not working. And I don't know what it is about me, but I can spot grift from a mile away. I don't know why. I mean, I've experienced a lot in my life. Maybe I've been around a lot of grifters in my fraternity or whatever else, and I've seen all sorts of crazy ass shit in my lifetime. But, I come from a very good family, a polished family, a professional family. I believe in integrity. I believe in justice. I believe in liberty and justice and separation of powers and the genius of what our founders created, even though they were flawed men, in order to form a more perfect union, so that a nation of, by, and for the people cannot perish from this earth. It's not funny. I'm smiling because it's ridiculous. And it's just, it's been the bane of my existence. And it's been the bane of a lot of people's existence. Look, man, I've coached football. I've skied a lot of very, very steep and dangerous mountains. I've climbed mountains. I've surfed in dangerous places. I've been around. I know how to take risks, but I know how to think through things and to execute at a high level. And I know when things are supposed to work and when they don't work. And I know the consequences and when things go bad. And I just have a complete commitment and love of our country above all else. I am a loyal patriot above all else. I cannot stomach corruption, and I certainly cannot stomach fascism, and corruption births and fuels fascism. And I'm waging a war on two fronts. And unfortunately, ignorance enables all. You don't have to understand everything for me to be able to show you the light. You don't have to understand complicated scenarios for me to give you the A, B, and C's of who did what, when, and how, and who covered it up to create this incredible, ginormous, corporate fascist system undergirded by a criminal syndicate that uses socialism to fuel the mafiocracy to enrich the richest while burying everybody else and fueling fascism. Guys, I don't walk on water. I can't part the Red Sea. I'm just a guy that did the work, and I've got all of the work. And what is the work? It reveals the largest criminal conspiracy and cover-up in history that never ended. This was all a criminal scheme that blew up the world in 2008. That's on display in the con at www.thecon.tv. You can see more information at the New Untouchables, which is part of the Real Progressives, which is phenomenal information. And then I'm all over TikTok and YouTube at Patrick Level Truth Bombs the Con. But I'm starting to feel momentum. I'm starting to connect with people on Twitter. That's been my focus. I gave up on Facebook. Facebook's a black hole for me. The more I ignore Facebook, the more it comes to me. I've got like 5,000 followers on Facebook. It's hilarious. I'm not doing anything. I haven't done anything since our prescient work, our profound work, which is called 11-1-22, which you can find on YouTube at Patrick Level Truth Bombs the Con, which is an 11-hour filibuster that lays all this stuff up that could turn the system upside down and inside out if only millions of people have seen it. To date, like 2.6 thousand people have seen it. We literally need tens of millions of people to understand what's going on so I can plow through the obfuscation and the deception. And it breaks my heart of mainstream media, specifically the New York Times. I mean, God, you guys have betrayed us, man. This is beyond Orwellian. And when I say the mainstream media has betrayed us, that doesn't mean I'm a Trump supporter. I can't stand Donald Trump. The guy's broken thousands and thousands of laws. He should have been in jail long before he became the president, and he's a pig lying to a bunch of people who don't know anything. And my God, people are still watching Fox, even though Fox settled for $787 million for admitting to basically lying as their business model, and they lied about the insurrection, but they still have credibility with people that want to be MAGA. What? You guys are the focus of the con. They're all snake oil salesmen. I am a guy, I got to bring it back to my favorite sport of all time. It's football. We love to compete, man. You don't put freaking idiots on the field. You don't pay off the fucking clowns, and referees to destroy the game. You put your best foot forward. You work your ass off. You work as a team to unify for a goal, and the champion prevails. That's the beauty of that structure. But ultimately, you know what? Imagine if this were all the scenario that I'm revealing to you. All the referees would be in on some sort of fixing the game. Players would be in on it. The coaches would be in on it. And trust me, there is corruption in football. There's plenty. But nothing like I'm talking about. Not remotely. We're talking about systemic financial corruption that honestly preys on people who don't understand how the system works. And they prey on everybody. Quite frankly, you can't. They're these diabolical villains that are madness, man. And I promise you, they're not one religion, they're not one gender, they're not one race. They're made up of everybody. And that's the most sickening aspect of this version of progress that we can actually see in real time. And I observed last week, female attorneys that are working for corruption and lying in courts to destroy women who have no other resources. It's not shameful. It's rape. What do you want to do to rapists? What do you want to do to child rapists? And on that note, let's think about this insanity on the right. Everybody goes apeshit over on the right, to Epstein and trafficking children and or underage. I mean, these are, I don't want to poo-poo it. It was a horrible thing, but a lot of times when you're talking about 17 and 18-year-old, prostitutes that came from really bad upbringings, man, you know, a lot of them were there because they were there for the money. That's different than priests preying on children in churches that are there devoutly worshiping God and believing in the priests who then rapes them. Maybe that's ultimately why they ended up in the situation they did at Sex Island and all the rest of it. What I can't stand is hypocrisy. You have people in the Republican sort of genre, if you will, MAGA particularly, that say they're right to life, right? But then they want to control everybody, but then they don't want to have any regulation for, military grade weapons that we've seen deranged people slaughter children for the last decade and a half. And then, proclaim right to life. And then do legislation like kill the gays. No, I'm sorry. You're just fucking sick in the head. And people that are part of the Democrats who want to say that we're saving democracy. We're not saving democracy. The corruption's so insane, we lost democracy a long time ago. We're not a supremacy of laws. No, I'm not talking Jim Crow laws or these Republican type of laws. I'm talking about laws formed by, a thoughtful, reasonable, calculated country that wants to see, fairness for all in the American dream and that sort of thing. We're none of that. We're billionaires spending billions to corrupt the process, to grift trillions, to piss on your head telling you it's rain, and rape you all day, every day. And you're not going to do anything about it except for punch sideways or downwards, which is sickening. So I'll repeat it again. I'm trying to create a tidal wave populist crusade to purge corruption. If you, me, and everyone you see who isn't a Nazi, who believes in dignity, decency, integrity, liberty, and sustainability, we come together in unity, we will defeat the perjury and the tyranny that is this dark shadow villain force of evil. I say, look, the greatest trick the devil ever played convinced the world he didn't exist. And recently I was just thinking about, one of my favorite songs from my high school years, even though it was from 10 years before, which of course is the Rolling Stones' Sympathy of the Devil. I shouted out, who killed the Kennedys, when after all it was you and me. There's only one way that we're out of this. And there's really three different pathways that are going to occur from what's going on. One, a continuation of this insane corruption that leads to further indentured servitude, which is basically slavery, which is basically thousands of years from the pharaohs to King George III. Okay? The United States is supposed to be just the fucking opposite of that shit. And then on top of it, if that's not the outcome, then we have either a right-wing fascist outcome or a left-wing communist Politburo. And by the way, communism and fascism at the end of the day, based on centralization of those forces, aren't that different, to be honest with you. And, in the end, it's like, guys, this is fucking history. It's happened throughout history. Why do we have to why don't we have to learn our lessons again? Why? I don't know. Why is it that I'm the only guy that can put all of this stuff together? Well, as it turns out, I'm not the only guy, but I'm definitely probably the centerpiece of what nobody's talking about, which again, Federal Reserve Act 13.3 was used illegally by the Federal Reserve of the United States to backstop a bankrupt financial system that got that way through corruption. And nowhere in the statutes does that say that's what the lender of last resort capacity of the United States is. Think about that next time you drive under an underpass with however many homeless people are there begging for food or whatever horrible types of situations those folks have to deal with. Not all of them are drug addicts or insane or were that way before all this stuff happened. It's collateral damage of financial terrorism. Osama bin Laden could never dream in a million years something so devastating to the American people. And this has happened over the course of 20 years. Meanwhile, we've got so much technology, we've got so much brain power, we've got so many capable, brilliant geniuses in this country that if we, unshackled them and we created a dynamism based on holding corruption to account and getting the bad guys out of the system and using the full faith and credit of the United States to help prop up what we would all then soar, just like, Apollo program to the moon, and we're going to go back. The sky's the limit. we can create a new enlightenment, an invigorated future for generations to come of this dynamism of this American dream if we don't fail. And we must merge and unite by the millions. I'm looking for 1,300 of you to invest $13. If you invest $13, again, remember that I've put $4.5 million into this thing if you want to know what my skin in the game is, plus probably at this point, who knows how many tens of thousands of hours, if you want to know the truth. But I've got all the evidence, and I've got the access to all the people who can take this system down. If only I can build a critical mass, and I'm the only one who's going to be able to do it with you. You and me equals we, and that's the whole point. And if if you have a $13 investment and you get 13 people, we're going to give you a T-shirt and a bumper sticker, possibly a sign. We got to sort all this stuff out once we get the capital ask. But the first 1,300 are going to go down as heroes in the history of saving the world, because we're the ones who got to have to save the world. It's we the people that have got to create a we the people movement to purge the corruption of for and by the corruption, and we got to rip it from them. And the only way we're going to do that is with the facts, because corruption is cancer, and truth is chemo, and truth is power to the people. And if you do that, you'll get a hashtag that's like, failure is not an option. When you have got the truth, you're bulletproof. Onwards and upwards, rise, roar, revolt, and so many others. The righteous grind, which that's what this is. And then in the end of this whole thing, if we keep growing, let's do the math real quick, okay? So just to show you, if we could, and by the way, the first step, I'm going to create a podcast that's going to bring all of these experts that I've been showing you in the con and everything else to interpret everything that's going on now and give you information that nobody in mainstream, nobody in these blowhard who chases the mainstream echo chamber like Russell Brand and Joe Rogan and all the rest of these guys, they can't see the forest for the trees either, because they're all algorithm whores, okay? I'm sorry. Comedians are not investigative journalists. I love them. I think they're great, but they don't have the answers that I have, okay? So that's first and foremost. And then second of all, if you think about it, we're in a situation where, let's just say we get to 1,300 people, and that's $16,900. That's going to get us to a 501c3 or 4. It's going to give us our organization, and then I'm going to be able to create this podcast. But I want to continue growing the circle. But let's just think about how fast this goes, right? So if we've got 1,300 people times 13, that equals 16,900 people. That then we add 13 to that. So that's over $219,000. And so now we're moving up the run. And ultimately, if we can get to like 5 to 10 million, I'm going to put together a grassroots barnstorming revival tour where I take the hundreds and hundreds of hours and tens of thousands of pieces of documentation, fraud, hundreds of hours of testimony and everything else. And I'll put together and I will reveal to you every aspect of what's happened to our country. And I'm going to take this on a barnstorming tour to where, we go to the Northwest, all over this great country, to break through the madness of this obfuscation, to get to the truth, to the millions of people that need to hear it. It's like I'm Bob Geldof, and this is Live Aid for corruption, to save the United States and democracy and liberty and justice for all, so a nation of, for, and by the people shall not perish from this earth. And if we can get to my ultimate goal, and again, 13 is because the original 13 colonies that fought King George III and miraculously defeated the biggest empire on earth at the time to give us liberty and justice for all, even though I know 2/3 people and all of the flaws of the original founders, and I keep reminding you that we had abolitionists. So if we got to 13 million contributors, that's $169 million, which would give us the war chest to do this tour, but to also create a new party. That's what we got to do to purge corruption, okay? That's what we got to do. And to put it into perspective, again, what I'm revealing to you, you might think the $169 million for grassroots efforts where you put in $13 is a lot of money. Billionaires are spending billions to loot trillions. What I'm revealing to you is that the 2009 financial crisis led to a stimulus of $29 trillion. There's 1,000 billion and a trillion to a very, very incy amount of people that were the beneficiaries of that doubled down. Yeah, they did pay that back, but they also had quantitative easing and all sorts of tricks that they basically pulled a grift and destroyed the American economy and enriched themselves from looting and made billionaires out of themselves at your expense. That's called the new aristocracy. diabolical griftopia pieces of shit that they are that murdered the American dream. I want to purge them into oblivion. I want to bulldoze them like they bulldozed millions of people, and I want to prevail, and I'm not going to drink tequila until after we do. And then I might drink quite a bit of it, actually. But, I'll throw down some Jack Daniels instead on July 4th sort of thing. Look, I think I've said enough. I probably talked way too much. Bottom line is I love you. Thank you for joining us. Please spread the word. Please get to millions of other people. This is the only way this is going to happen. I encourage you to check out all my work if you've got questions about me. www.thecon.tv. Of course, Patrick Lovell, Truth Bombs the Con. And that's all over YouTube. That's all over TikTok. And you can see the new Untouchables on The Real Progressives. Just do a Google search and you'll easily find that. Remember, failure is not an option. Rise, roar, revolt, onwards and upwards.